Back diving into some more of the cinematography in Amazon's Reacher, and in this one I'm just looking at more night scenes, and in particular there are a few street shots in here that I just wanted to dip into really briefly and take a look at what's going on. The lensing, as ever, is interesting in this one because we're getting all of those kind of pops of light which have that sort of cross pattern to them, where the top of the cross has a blue and the bottom of the cross has a blue haze, and then you've got those little bits coming out to either side. Really interesting. I'm still trying to work out what lensing and filtration they might be using on this program, so if you do know, drop it into the comments. And I think that something that's clear when you look at any of the night scenes here, they must be using a camera which has a pretty high sensitivity. Not uncommon these days, to be honest, because most cameras are pretty sensitive in the scheme of things. What is interesting is that the lights that you would see on the street are actually playing pretty bright. In this one, perhaps there is something happening because it's a very big area of illumination that we got just here. It's very soft, and it seems to be a tiny bit different in terms of color temperature and quality to what's going on the back. So in the back, we've got an area which is kind of orange there. We've got an area which is sort of greeny just here. And then in the foreground, all of this has a cleaner look to it. It's not quite the same as the others, so I would say that perhaps there's a big top light coming in. So I'd say as soon as you're doing this, you're using some kind of cherry picker, forget what Americans call them, condor. So that's over there with some kind of light just beaming down, illuminating the whole area so that we can see what's happening in the foreground, and the background's just being let play to whatever level it naturally is getting. And you will find a lot in even big budget Hollywood films, you can't afford to go and light the entire street or highway unless you're Quentin Tarantino and you're shooting scenes along an entire stretch with dozens of cherry pickers. It just isn't practical. So often, especially in older films, things in the background will be much, much darker, much lower in level than what you have in the foreground. Here they're doing it fairly tastefully, so they're using a camera with pretty high sensitivity because they're confident that, yes, we can just let it play and we can just light to a level which is similar to what the street lights are giving us, and we're just going to spread it a little bit, fill a larger area, give more for our talent to work in. Kind of cool. And I think it's a little bit more the mentality that a lot of people will have on the budget end of the scale. So if you are going out and shooting something, you don't have a film crew with you, then you're probably not going to be able to do any of those big scale things that I mentioned. So you are more working with the natural light that's there. I say natural light, just the practical sources that happen to be on the street. So here again, we're getting some streaking in the tail lights just there, calling that out, and on whatever it is that they're shining on just there, maybe a sign, and all over the place, even on this one just up here. It's a really odd artifact, really interesting looking. And we see Reacher just in the foreground here. This area of street lighting feels a little bit contrived because you've got all of that happening just there. So I think they have gone in and done some things here just to make the scene play. And these can just be little hits that they're adding in very, very quickly. You don't have to spend a lot of time necessarily. I mean, you can obviously spend as much time as you want. You don't have to spend all the time in the world on something like this to make it read. And what I mean by that is you are filming this for a reason. You have to show your characters in a certain setting, and you have to understand which direction they're going, what they're doing, and what the environment is. And in order to make all of that read for a casual viewer, you just need enough light in the right places to make it all make sense. And beyond that, you can then get into the whole detail work of cinematography and how you actually want it to feel and all the rest of it. But in order to make this read, I would say we've got a light pushing in probably from this side, some kind of source just there, just pushing across and maybe lighting this. That could be something coming from this side as well, just here. I don't know that it's all coming from this. This is certainly playing on the trees, and we're getting this tree lit up just here. And that one also just there. But then in the background, something I definitely want to call out is this. They put some light source behind that bush just to give this area a little bit of shape. So we've got an area of shadow, we've got an area of highlight, and then we're back to shadow, and then we're back to highlight. So it's creating these little pockets of interest, so when we look at that whole shot, it isn't just one area of street illuminated and a couple of cars driving away. We do get a sense of them being in some kind of neighborhood. Little details, and you could do that with a couple of battery-powered LEDs now, no problem at all. Even the light that I've got behind me just there, which is a little Lycos LED panel, you could probably fire that into the side of a building up quite close. It would give you a little hit like that. Lighting across a large area like this is going to be much harder, but I would say with a couple of aperture lights, 300D, 300X, you could probably achieve something similar to this. You are going to always be bumping up against your sensitivity, pushing your ISO up, working with a faster lens, but at a certain point, if you're balancing to the streetlights, you don't need too much more level. You can do it. That said, you still need permits, and those can be expensive. Driving scene, nothing I'm going to talk about with these. It's just a little bit of color. We've got different temperatures of light going on, green, push, all around here, and on, I can't remember anyone's name apart from Reacher's. The female police officer's name escapes me, so yeah, got light on her hands. All of the dash got blue light going on, and their police scanners and whatnot coming in just there. Much, much warmer area of light just here, coming from where that car is, and even catching up onto the trees and things. So I would say that this area feels like it's been lit by the film crew just to give us something going on down there, but maybe not. You do get mixed color temperature lighting on streets now. It's just happening where you get different LEDs, sodium vapors, all kinds of stuff like that. And then we're into this scene outside a house. It's interesting for me to look at the wide shot of this because the lights that one presumes are there and there, they're playing really bright in shot. If you look at how much light that is actually throwing out, perhaps they've dressed something into those, or perhaps they're just up on the sensitivity. So really, really pushing out, but it lights the whole porch area just there. Then we got more downlighters playing on this whole area, and it does feel like actually those are the lights that are doing the majority of the work just there. I can't see much of anywhere else where they've been getting anything in. So yeah, working with a practical source helps you to have it in shot. You know where the light's coming from, but it does mean that often that practical will get super bright and blown out. And if you embrace that look, then it's fine. A lot of the time in films, you go for a more nuanced approach where the practicals are there to be in the scene and you can see them and imagine that they're casting the light, but then the light's actually coming from somewhere else and they don't then play as bright and they don't blow out as much. But it's a stylistic choice. So looking at what Reacher's got just here, he's getting a big push of light from this side, highlight down the side of his face, but he is still getting, on his fill side, an awful lot of light, more than you would be just outside a house dark at night. So they've got to have another light source in here, maybe a big bounce, just to fill in a bit of what the other isn't giving. And that doesn't have to be a super, super bright source. It can be something relatively low in level. When you are dealing with just a soft fill, gently teasing it in and then letting the highlights play from something else, you can get away with a much, much lower level than perhaps you would if you were trying to make it a little bit more like a key. And the concessions clearly to making sure that you can see things in the background. The trees are a little bit illuminated. We've got the window, got all of the blinds and things, drapes in the window just there. Layers of light, and you've also got layers of shadow in there as well. So there's plenty of interest going on, and the same plays out across when we get to Jack. Much cooler light on this side coming in as well from everything we saw, downlighters and the hall light, the doorway light. The eyes tell us quite a lot. It's interesting that she is catching an awful lot of light from somewhere under her chin just there. Still got the main push of light coming from the house and the windows in the background. Jack has a good amount of light going across this side of his face. Still got a reasonable amount of light for the fill side. But if you look at his eyes, he's getting two pronounced highlights just there. And those two highlights are different color temperatures. So one can assume that one of those is going to be either the window or the porch. And then this one is rather central. And it feels like maybe whatever is casting up just here is what's giving him that little catchlight in his eyes. And a little catchlight will go a long way to actually helping a character feel like they've got light in their face. If you can see something in their eyes, then it will get you much more mileage even than actually bringing in a big light source and light it the whole face. So that little twinkle can be all you need sometimes. It's not even like we see that a lot in the daytime with him, because in the daytime he's kind of almost full Clint Eastwood, eyes squinted down. Here his eyes are much more open and we're getting that little ping in there. So I'd say that in the night scenes he feels a little bit more relatable. You get a little bit more in his eyes. You're seeing a bit more emotion in that. Gives it a different vibe. Likewise, when we look at her, we do see that light pushing in just there. Got that tiny little catch light actually making it across to both. And if you look at the shadow of her nose, you can see this feels like something's coming in quite low. So we've got highlight down the side of her face. Shadow is kicking up and round like this. So it really does feel like a low push, and the catch light actually reinforces that because it's low. It's on the lower hemisphere of her eyeball, so you know that it's got to be kind of below her eyeball level height just there. So I would be inclined to say that they brought a little light in, they're pushing it up. If they're going completely dogma and trying to shoot everything just with the practicals that are in the shot and just bring in a little bit of bounce or something, then maybe that's just a little lawn light, something, you know, you stick to mark your path and it's just pinging into her eye. Completely possible. I'm inclined to say not, but until I find some behind the scenes shots of this, I'm not going to know. Got a lot of light going on in the trees, just helping to frame everything. All of those little areas of light and shadow giving you plenty of framing references for where we are and what we got in the background, and making sure that we still know that we're in this location and where everyone's positioned. So that all plays quite nicely. I wouldn't say it's the most finessed night shot that I've ever seen, but there are a lot of little techniques that you can use just here, especially getting a little ping of light into the eye, and especially the trick of getting something into the background, even if it's just shining something on the trees, even if they don't look super realistic. You know, people stick up lighters in trees, like towns and civic planting. You will often have some crazy little pop of light just to illuminate it. So you can get away with it, and it helps to give everything a little bit of shape and a little bit of vibe.